And we are back on the chosen journey with the chosen lawyer, Steve Carsey, Big Money Grip. And today we're on chapter 35, as promised from last week. And we're going to be talking about the MLB award winners in the American League from 2022.
Yeah, it should be fun. See who won these awards and you know, just what kind of years that they had. I mean, we've seen a few of these awards been given out already, obviously the MVP awards and whatnot, and they're both well deserved. So it'll be fun to talk about.
Well, we've had a lot of listeners on social media and YouTube that are not happy with us, Steve. And they're only unhappy with us on one of the categories, and that's the American League MVP. So people were commentating on our pick, telling us how silly and dumb and irrational we are. And I tell them, please go back and listen to it again because, Steve and I think, are in a similar area. I may have gone in one direction, he went in a different direction, but we came to the same place. We agreed that regardless of our own personal opinions, that the AL MVP would be Aaron Judge. We told you this, we were sure of it, and we were right. That being said, if I had my vote, I don't know if I'm outside of the box. I mean, two guys did vote for Shohei Ohtani. I would have voted for Shohei Ohtani on many, many levels this year. Not taking away from Aaron Judge's accomplishments, he did get 28 out of 30 place votes. He did finish in a landslide. He almost was unanimous. But to me, there's a lot of factors. I look deep into it, Steve. And one of the things, as I mentioned before, if Ohtani was on the Yankees and Judge is on the Angels and their respective teams, and Yankees are going to playoffs, Angels are not, I think you're seeing Ohtani and Judge in different lights. And simply for the value of being a two-way player and what he brings to the table and how strong he is in both levels. If I'm building a team around one player, it's going to be Ohtani. If I want somebody in my team, it's going to be Ohtani. Not, again, taking anything away from Judge. If Judge goes off and hits 50 home runs, I think we're having a different discussion. But the fact that he broke the AL record, I think, helped him a lot. So I think regardless, with all the press and hype he got, we were correct. He did win the MVP award. So we were not crazy in that sense, but I do hear those Ohtani fans, and I can't say how you do not have Ohtani every year as the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, it's a viable discussion to have, right? I mean, we can go through this. It's all subjective to a certain extent, again, but you can't deny what either player did. One guy was on a winning team, one guy wasn't, right? That takes into account. One guy plays on the East Coast, one guy plays on the West Coast. Takes into account. Um, Obviously the home run record and breaking it, that's one thing. Ohtani didn't break any records, and the Angels fell a little bit short of the playoffs, just so to speak, just a little bit. So, like these are factors that definitely get considered when voting for the MVP. Judge carried his team; he was really consistent the whole year. With the barrage of injuries that the Yankees had, and Shohei Ohtani came out and just did his thing day in and day out and stayed healthy. I mean, he's not he's playing every day as a DH, right? He's not playing the outfield. He is pitching every fifth day, so that you got to take that into account. He did punch out 200 players, 200 hitters. You got to take it into account, and he won 10 plus games, so you got to take that into account. But that being said, you know, you can you can go either way on this, and I think it's a whole different conversation of who's the MVP for the year as opposed to who do you want to start your team with. I mean, you know, and then the salaries take into consideration when you start your team up. I mean, are you going to take a guy who can pitch and hit for a lesser salary than a guy who's just going to play right field and be a star on your team? Everybody has a different opinion on that, but at the end of the day, the right guy, in my opinion, won the MVP for this year. I think he had a tremendous year. He stayed healthy. He broke the home run record, and very deserving of it. And not that Shohei is not, but when you take everything into account, Aaron Judge is heads and above the winner for this year.
Fair enough. The one guy standing there saying, "Hey, remember me?" is Yordan Alvarez. All he did was lead his team to the World Series, which does not count in the voting. The voting stops at the end of the regular season, which I always found interesting, Steve. And I know they have their MVP awards and their playoff awards, but if you're going to look at who the MVP, who the Cy Young Award, it'd be interesting if they incorporated the postseason, but not going to be happening anytime soon. But Alvarez, you know what? If he's in the National League, I think he would have given Goldschmidt a run for his money as far as and winning the award. Nobody discussed him in the talk, barely. He did finish third. Great season, nothing to be ashamed of at all. Really stirred the drink there in Houston, and good on him. And finishing strong with 232 points in the MVP voting.
Yeah, absolutely. Alvarez had a great year as well, and I can understand why it's just a seasonal award. I mean, what happens if Yordan Alvarez goes to the playoffs and Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge do not? Are you going to have a level playing field when he's able to continue his at bats and put up numbers and the other two guys aren't? So I can understand that, and I think that's just the smart way to do it. It's the most valuable player over 162 games, and just leave it at that. But you're right. Alvarez, tremendous year. Deserves to be in the talk for that, and very well was. But again, head and shoulders above the rest, Aaron Judge.
Fair enough. And again, I would have voted Ohtani, but kudos to Aaron Judge. I would have voted him second. Most of the AL, I think they got it right really well as far as all the awards go. For the Cy Young Award, I had no doubt it'd be Verlander. None of the other voters disagreed. He got the perfect 30 votes. So he finished with a perfect 210 points. Good on him. Alek Manoah, I think maybe was a little bitter as far as finishing third. Maybe that's why he was chirping off on Garrett Cole, but one has nothing to do with the other. I was surprised at Dylan Cease's numbers for the White Sox. He had a really, really good year, and none of us really talked about it because we were so obsessed with Verlander.
Yeah, I mean, Verlander, he's, again, coming off a Tommy John injury and then, putting up those type of numbers at the age of 39 or 40 is incredible, right? I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't just look at the sub 2 ERA over the course of how many innings coming off a year that you've missed. Ran into a little bit of, I think he got a little tired in September at the end. I know he had a small injury, but the bulk of his work was done over the first 5 months of the season.
And he led the majors in ERA with 1.75, whip in 0.83. This is not a closer. This is a starter with that kind of whip. Opponent's batting average 186, struck out 27.8% of hitters and walked only 4.4%. That is insanity. Absolute insanity. Voters got this well. He deserved it. Good on him. And he lives a decent life. I think he's pretty happy with his state in life, and I think he'll be doing okay next year, pay wise.
Yeah, absolutely. He deserves what he's going to get. Now it just comes down to AAV and years that he's going to command on the open market.
Would you dare make a prediction at this point where he's heading?
Listen. He's played in a few different spots. Obviously, if he wanted to play in Houston, I think they would have already ironed something out. I think the dollar value that he's asking for is going to push a few teams away. So there's going to be few teams, a limited amount of teams that are going to be able to afford him. So if I was a betting man, I would say Houston, the Yankees, the Mets, or the Dodgers would be the four that I would lay out there.
You don't think the Tigers are going to bring him home for 3 years, 120 mil?
I think they'll pass on that.
I think he's going back to Houston myself, but I've been surprised before. I just think this is a good fit for him. I think he's doing well there, but will they ante up? Because he's not going to go on these 1 years anymore. He said he's going to maximize his earnings, and good on him. You know what? If someone will pay him 3 years, 120 mil, take it and run. And I think the Jays have to be thrilled with Manoah, and he was everything they needed him to be. And if they have one or two more of him, they could be a very scary team come 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays have been building and have been, putting their roster together. They got, young players that are continuing to grow. And we'll see where that team goes. But like any young team, you have a window, and then these guys start making big money through arbitration, or you got to give them long-term deals, and that's kind of where we're at, where teams get blown up. Milwaukee is kind of in that situation now. Is they had 17 ARB players where they would have had to play. And, obviously Hunter Renfroe, they had to trade because that's a big dollar value. Josh Hader last year was one that they knew was going to be making a lot of money through arbitration. So they traded him and got some players back for him. Obviously Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, are arbitration eligible players. So these are guys who have put up really good numbers over the course of years and played on 1-year deals because they were team controlled. Now that they have a little bit of, uh, flexibility or a little bit of weight in the game, they go through the arbitration process, and now they start commanding a little bit more higher dollar value, and that kind of pushes some of these smaller markets out of their price range.
Well, looking at the American League Manager of the Year and looking at the finalists, we can call them, I think, the American League Magicians of the Year, because these were not the top dollar, top teams as far as what we expected. But these were, I think, the managers that got the most. I'm not going to say out of nothing, but as far as least expected. And three very deserving people. By the end of the day, I agreed with the decision for Terry Francona for the Cleveland Guardians, and good on him. And man, he's a Hall of Fame manager. Like, what this guy has done in his career, it's pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. He took Boston to a World Series. Obviously, Cleveland was in the World Series in 2016 with him under the helm, and then I'm not sure that anybody had the Cleveland Guardians winning 92 games this year, right? With the roster that they had, but again, they're a very forward, analytical thinking ball club. They find players who fit their mold and what they do. They don't hit a lot of homers. They don't strike out a lot, and they put the ball in play. And they have their one or two guys like Jose Ramirez or a Shane Bieber who they rely on, and then they fill in the spots with these other quality players that are going to perform on the field that are young and they have a great development. And that's why they put themselves in position to win, even though they can't go out and spend the most money in the division like either the Twins or the White Sox.
And Francona has played with teams that were very veteran laden. And look at this team. I mean, this stat, the Guardians were the first team in MLB history to start at least 16 different rookies and win a division. So if for his age and his experience, he's obviously getting through to the younger players, and never heard anything from a player except loving to play for this guy.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that is a mainstay usually most of the places that he goes, right? I mean, obviously, he had left Boston, not so good terms maybe, but once he found a home in Cleveland, he's been there, and he's been a stronghold there in the dugout for a very long time, and has put together some really tremendous seasons, and has a really good idea of how to manage, and he's definitely a player's manager.
Not seen many star players, executives, managers that have left Boston and left on good terms. At some point, they have to really look at the window on that one, but we won't go there. But two guys that I would say we got to give kudos to, especially one that made the playoffs. So finishing in second was Brandon Hyde with the Orioles, and then Scott Service with the Mariners. And man, they really did not much to work with. These were not seasons they were expected to do anything. The Orioles were in contention to make the playoffs for the longest time there. And I remember watching them live this year and saying, this is a quadruple A team at best. And I can't believe what they got out of them. And same with the Mariners. So, good, steady managers, and kudos to them that they got their credit here. Whereas you could look at, Dusty Baker, you could look at all the bigger markets and saying, well, they went to the playoffs. So there's your manager of the year. The underdogs got their credence this year.
Yeah, absolutely, and the well deserved, right? I mean, you lead your team, and you outperform what anybody thinks that you're going to do as a team. There's something to be said about the guy that is leading that club and who's in the dugout.
So congratulations to Francona. And we finish off the American League with the Rookie of the Year. And I think this was a no-doubter as well. I was shocked to see he didn't get 30 votes. He only got 29 first place votes, and that's Julio Rodriguez on Seattle. Man, that train has left the station long ago. The bandwagon is in full force on this guy. Like, people love this player.
Yeah, no, he's a great player, right? I mean, obviously, it's 1 year, and we got to continue to see how he performs and how he grows as a player in this league. He's one is exciting to watch, but there are many things that contribute to that, right? He's got to stay healthy. He's got to continue to perform at a high level, and I see this kid doing that. I just think he's a tremendous talent, and we will continue to watch how he grows in Seattle.
The guy that I have been tooting his horn and watching in the playoffs, and I love watching this kid, is Steven Kwan. And you talk about contrasting styles with Rodriguez. It doesn't get any different than this. I mean, like wow. With Rodriguez, struck out 25.9% of the time. Kwan, of the 2,643 pitches he faced, he swung and missed at 91 of them. Like, this guy does not strike out at all as a rookie. Wow.
Yeah, but that's just part of what the Cleveland Indians do, right? They find players that fit their mold, and that's their mold. There's a contact guy, maybe not homers. Power will come later, but if you can find a guy at the top of your lineup that can make consistent contact and put the ball in play and make the other pitcher work, that's kind of what their mantra is, or their mold, and they just get a bunch of guys who can do this.
I was talking about this with a guy last night as we were driving, and mentioning that these 250 hitters with 25 home runs and 150 plus strikeouts and play decent outfield defense are a dime a dozen. And he was saying, I take Kwan any day of the week. Gold Glover, steals bases, contact, doesn't strike out. Give me that over that high power, high strikeout guy. Not really great defense any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, to each his own, right? Do you want the 3-run homer, or do you want the guy to get on base? I mean, that's kind of where we're at in the game right now. I mean, one big swing will usually give your team a huge advantage. So, they want guys who might hit 250, 260, but put up 25 to 30 and drive in, 95 to 100, and they're completely content with that.
Last question for you before we finish off today's chapter. But with the changing of the fact that there will not be the shifts anymore, do you think there'll be a higher premium placed on defense and guys that can get to the ball better? And it will not mask as much, I guess, deficiencies. You're going to have to really play a true defense if there's no shifts.
In short, yes, teams are going to now have to find guys who have a little bit more range, who maybe are a little bit more athletic, if they didn't have guys who are athletic at certain positions, because you're going to have to cover more ground. If you're not able to stand in the spot where the computer tells you to stand because of what the rules and regulations are because of the shift, then you'll have to find a guy who can move a little bit. I mean, especially, you're not going to be able to stand on the grass. You're going to have to be on the dirt, and you're going to have to be on a certain side of the bag when we start the game up again next year.
I don't get the whole changing of the shifting thing. I'm like, at the end of the day, if you know there's a shift on you, learn how to make contact outside of the shift. But that's me. But hey, that's another discussion for another day. Orioles fans are going to be stringing us by the rope if we do not mention that Kwan actually finished in third place. It was Adley Rutschman who got the second place as a rookie catcher. And this another under the radar guy, was a first overall pick, but we didn't talk about him a hell of a lot because of what Rodriguez did. But you know what? For defense and decent offense, he was pretty steady back there. I think they're really happy with him.
Oh, absolutely. If you can find a guy like that to be a mainstay behind the plate and at a premium position, and lead your staff and give you plenty of offense, I think they're really happy with what he did, and him finishing second just cements that that was the right pick for them when they drafted him.
And that finishes off the American League and all the award winners. We will be back next week, and then we're going to jump into the National League. Less controversy, but still some interesting picks. on who won the awards in MLB for 2022. Steve Carsey, Big Money Grip, always a pleasure, my friend.
Jonathan, thank you. Great conversation again, and look forward to next time talking about the National League.
All right, see you next week.